Goblin launch detected.
Hey gang, just to let you know, you can now use the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, at flipsidegaming.com and originalmagicart.store. Using the code gets you 10% off orders $10 or more, and you get to help out the channel at the same time. I also want to let you know that Flipside Gaming will be giving away a box of War of the Sparks. From April 1st through May 6th, any order that's over $10 or more will get you entered to win. One entry per person, so good luck and have fun. Welcome back, my lovely generic goblin gang. Today's game has the rambunctious rhino Roon, played by Trevor, with a forest, sunpetal grove, sea of clouds, bountiful promenade, consecrated sphinx, muldrifter, and wood elves for his opener. Mike is trying out his Lord of Lightning's Keranos deck, keeping Evolving Wilds, Grixis Panorama, Sulphur Falls, Falconath Marauders, Hunted Dragon, and Fabricate. Dave is playing his Avatar Aang wannabe, Homura, and keeps 4 snow-covered mountains, Spine Rock Knoll, Worn Power Stone, and a Vidalcan Orrery. And last but not least, we have another Mike, who we'll refer to as Mike W. You'll remember him from playing the Thrasios and Tymna deck that a lot of people had a problem with. Well, he's back and so is the deck, but this time we've paired him up with some more competitive styled players. He keeps a Demonic Tutor, a Windswept Heath, Flash, Green Sun Zenith, Morphic Pool, Birthing Pod, and a Swan Song. Mike wins the die roll and starts us off. Mike plays an Evolving Wilds and passes. Dave plays a tapped Spine Rock Knoll and he hides away a card. Mike W plays a Windswept Heath as Dave laments drawing the Chancellor of the Forge for his first draw instead of having it in his opener. Trevor plays a Sea of Clouds, and at the end of turn, Mike cracks the Wilds for a mountain, while Mike W cracks his Heath for a hollowed fountain. Mike plays a Grixis Panorama, passing. Dave plays a snow-covered mountain, and also passes. Mike W plays his Morphic Pool, and he casts Lavinia, Azorius Renegade. Trevor plays a Bountiful Promenade, which comes in untapped, and he passes. At the end of turn, Mike cracks the Panorama for another mountain, and starts his own turn. Mike plays a Sulphur Falls as his land for turn, and he casts Fabricate. He goes to find the Sword of the Anime, and he passes, putting it to hand. Dave plays a snow-covered mountain, and he casts a Soul Ring, and then taps out to cast a Worn Power Stone. Mike W plays a Mana Confluence, and also taps out to cast Tymna, taking 1. Moving to combat, Lavinia hits Dave for 2, and in his post-combat main phase, Mike W pays 1 life to draw 1 card with Tymna's ability. Trevor plays a forest, and he brings out a Wood Elves. He searches for a land while passing to Mike. Mike plays an island as Trevor grabs an Expedition Canopy Vista, and then passes to Dave. Dave plays a tapped Myriad Landscape, which once again I say as if there is a choice, and he casts a Vidalcan Orrery before passing. Mike W draws for turn, and he heads to combat. He hits Dave with Tymna and Mike with Lavinia, dealing 2 to each of them, but forgetting to gain 2 life. He then loses 2 life in his post-combat main phase to draw 2 cards. Mike W then plays a Reflecting Pool, and he casts an Elves of Deep Shadow. He then takes another 1 to cast Green Sun Zenith, where X is 2, and he goes to find a Fauna Shaman, putting it to the field. Trevor evokes a Muldrifter in his main phase, having it die immediately and drawing 2. He then plays an island, and he casts a Gilded Drake, who comes in and swaps itself with Mike W's Fauna Shaman. Trevor passes, and at the end of turn, Mike basic land cycles his Ash Barrens and goes to find an island. Mike plays an island, and he casts Keranos, passing to Dave. Dave plays a snow-covered mountain, and he cracks his landscape, inadvertently sacrificing his Soul Ring, which Trevor nicely catches and reminds him to keep on the field. He grabs 2 more snow-covered mountains and shuffles up. Dave then pays 5 to cast his Incendiary command, choosing to deal 2 to all creatures, and then has the table wheel their hand and draw that many. Triumphantly, the Gilded Drake survives as Dave passes to Mike W. Mike W plays an Exotic Orchard for his land for turn, and he moves to combat, hitting Dave for 3 in retaliation with the Gilded Drake. In his second main phase, he casts a Serra Ascendant and passes Trevor. Trevor plays a tapped Seaside Citadel, and he casts Lightning Greaves, and then a Foily Aura Shards before passing to Mike. Mike forgets his Keranos trigger on his turn, and he plays a Reliquary Tower. We then see an Urbrass come into play, and he passes to Dave. Dave plays a high market and passes, since he has no pressure to play any of his cards on his turn thanks to the orrery. Mike W draws for turn, and he plays a Cave of Koilos as his land for turn. He swings the Ascendant at Mike and the Gilded Drake at Trevor. And in his second main phase, he casts a Sensei's Divining Top. Trevor plays a Plains, and out comes Roon, who comes in tapped because of Urabrask. With Roon entering, Trevor has the Aura Shards target the Vidalcan Orrery. Flashes in Martin Stromgald, and then he casts a Wheel of Fortune. With the wheel in the stack, Trevor uses his Heroic Intervention to grant his stuff hexproof and indestructible in case Dave draws a board wipe, and Mike W decides to use Memory Lapse to put the wheel on top of Dave's library. The orrery is then destroyed, and Trevor then puts the Greaves onto Roon, and he passes turn. Mike remembers his Keranos trigger, and he reveals a Tyrant's Familiar. He deals 3 damage to the Gilded Drake, killing it, and draws a Tyrant for turn. Mike then plays a Mountain for turn, and he casts a Heartless Hidetsugu. Not expecting the Heartless to live very long, Mike activates the Ogre's ability to cut everyone's life in half. It's at this point that Mike W realizes he should have gained some life, so he only drops to 20. And looking to help him drop even further, Mike decides to swing Urbrask at him for 4. It's at this point that Trevor suggests to kill Mike, which only confuses the table as there are 2 Mikes sitting down. At the end of turn, Dave activates his Knoll and he's able to cast a Caged Sun. Dave draws and casts his Wheel of Fortune, and the guys wheel and draw a new hand, with Mike W flashing in an Aven Mind Sensor. Dave then drops a Rings of Brighthearth, which is concerning, and drops a Bloodstained Mire, cracking it and losing 1 life to try and go and find a snow-covered mountain. He taps 1 snow-covered mountain to pay for the ability with the rings, which is a pretty cool interaction and also incredibly lucky since he's only looking at the top 4. Dave announces that he thinks he can kill Trevor at this point, and then casts his commander, who comes in tapped and makes Dave realize that his plan of attack probably won't work. He sacrifices his commander to the high market, gaining 1 life, and Homura dies and goes to the graveyard, and then comes back as a legendary enchantment, Homura's Essence. Dave then casts a Pia and Kieran Nalar, who come in tapped and give him 2 Thopter tokens as they enter, which also come in tapped. He then moves to combat, pumping Martin once with Homura's Essence and dealing 4 damage to Trevor. So much for taking him out. Mike W plays a Drowned Catacomb and plays his own Aura Shards, making no artifact or enchantment safe. We then see a Carrion Feeder hit the field, who enters and blows up Rings of Brighthearth. Mike W then casts Thrasios, and he hits the Caged Sun. Not wanting to stir the pot and make any more enemies, Mike W then passes. Trevor plays a Savannah, and he casts an Eternal Witness, who comes in tapped. He blows up Dave's Soul Ring, and returns to his hand the Fracturing Gust that he discarded earlier. Moving to combat, Roon hits Mike for 4 commander damage, and Trevor passes turn. Mike reveals a mountain from his Keranos trigger, and draws it and then another card. He plays a mountain and casts a Quicksilver Amulet. Mike then passes, and at the end of turn, Trevor casts Fracturing Gust. With the spell in the stack, Mike activates the amulet to bring in an Udvara Hellkite. The Gust then resolves, and Trevor gets 16 life from destroying 8 permanents with a spell, and Mike W decides to activate his top, and then taps it to draw a card and save it by putting it on top of his library. Dave draws and casts a Spawning Pit. He then pays to activate Pia and Kieran Lalar's ability, sacrificing the pit to deal 2 damage to the Aven Mind Sensor. Mike W decides to sacrifice it instead to the Carrion Feeder, giving the feeder a +1/+1 counter. We then see Dave use Gamble with the Aven Mind Sensor gone, and he goes to tutor for a card. He randomly discards a Snow-Covered Mountain, and then plays another one before passing turn. Mike W plays a Llanowar Waste as a land for turn, tapping it for a colorless to help cast his top. He then casts a Sword of Feast and Famine, and moves the equip onto his Ascendant. The Ascendant then goes at Trevor for 3, who has to discard when it connects, and he discards Farseek. Mike W untaps his lands, and he gains 3 life. In his second main phase, he uses Citywide Bust to help wipe away some of the big threats on the board, and he passes to Trevor. Trevor plays a Mossward Bridge and hides away a card. He casts a main phase Wrath of God, and Mike W activates Thrasios' ability. He looks at the top card and reveals a forest, putting it into play. Mike also taps the Heartless Hidetsugu, and once again the table cuts their life totals in half. And then with the board wipe resolving, Trevor casts Rhystic Study before passing to Mike. Mike reveals a steam vents to his Keranos trigger, drawing it and another card for turn. He plays a command tower as his land for turn, and then casts an Inferno Titan in his main phase. He has the enter the battlefield trigger deal 3 to Trevor, and he passes to Dave. Dave draws and passes turn. Mike W draws and plays a polluted Delta. He then casts a body double in his main phase and has it become a copy of Azor the Lawbringer, which he discarded earlier to one of the many wheels. With nothing else, he passes to Trevor. Trevor plays a Tundra in his main phase, and he casts a Soul Ring. He then drops a Craterhoof Behemoth, and responding to the Enter the Battlefield trigger, Mike casts a Cackling Counterpart, as it's not his next turn, so Azor's ability can't stop him. He makes a token copy of the Inferno Titan, and he deals 3 to Trevor. Trevor then wants to give Mike multiple targets to take out so he doesn't necessarily die in the next turn, and he swings the Craterhoof at Mike W, who lets the damage go through rather than sacrifice his Azor copy. Mike reveals for the Keranos trigger his copy of Mitotic Manipulation, which is honestly the first time I've ever seen this card played. He uses the trigger to deal 3 damage to the other Mike, really bringing to light the Highlander element of EDH. Mike then plays a Reflecting Pool, and he moves to combat, finishing off Dave and Trevor at the same time with some Inferno Titan triggers, a few pumps, and then some combat damage. Game review time! So, I think we're all a little bit surprised by how long the Heartlit Hidetsugu stayed on the field. 2 activations is probably too many. I think that Dave may have inadvertently helped Mike win the game by wheeling away answers from everyone else's hands, because I think a key piece removal or a good counterspell probably could have changed how this game went. Considering how consistent and aggressive Trevor's decks tend to be, his Roon deck certainly didn't get off the ground. Again, I think this was impacted by the fact that he had to wield 2 or 3 hands this game, and he was left with something suboptimal. I think Mike W's deck is very strong, but unfortunately relies on having creatures on the field for a lot longer and gaining value out of attack steps and draws. Unfortunately, with the amount of board wipes this game, he wasn't really able to establish himself. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/mtgmudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/mtgmudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.